Hello, welcome back to the Fighting OCD podcast with yours truly, Gregory Jean Conrad. Today is a special episode the of this podcast. I guess you could say it's the Mother's Day edition. Um, Celebrating my mom and all she's done for me in my life. Um, and specifically, I'm going to talk about diagnosis because that features her. But I've been planning on talking about this since the beginning. So, um, what happened? What led me to get diagnosed? Um, Well, I have always struggled, well, ever since sixth grade, with academic perfectionism, and I have to get good grades. Um, that's uh, how OCD took form earliest in my life, and then Uh, I had heart surgery, which we'll get into at some future point. And uh, after that is when OCD really kicked in, and um, then I started having religious, I'm a sinner obsessions, and germs. Uh, And uh, so I guess that's all to say that my parents were pretty used to the academic uh, obsessiveness um, growing up, but in a matter of a couple months right after the heart surgery, um, I OCD really ramped up, and there were these other things, and so it was very noticeable, I guess, at least to my mom, and I will be eternally grateful that she placed the call so that I could uh, get diagnosed. Um, so. I, what drove her to that? Escalating OCD. Again, after the heart surgery, but specifically, she talks of one incident, though sounded like it happened repeatedly. Um, I would um, I started worrying about germs and like we've talked about, the bathroom is a place full of germs and fears, and especially public bathrooms, because everyone uses them. Um, yeah, and specifically the high school bathroom was something that I grew to fear greatly, and so I would do everything I could to hold it and not use it during the day, but I sometimes I just had to go, and so I had to go, and then that was it was not fun. And so uh, I kept coming to my mom, saying, um, I'm worried, and she talks about me being like shaking, uh, and being like pale, white all over and shaking and just freaking out, talking about the germs in the high school bathroom. And I'm afraid that my shoes touched something. I mean, I try not to use the bathroom there because it's just bad, and it's not safe. But I had to today, and there was this stuff on the ground, and I don't know what it was, but there's also this drain, and I mean, why do they have drains? Obviously, they have drains in case the toilets start overflowing, and then the sewage can go down the drains. Uh, like uh, and so not happy about the bathroom floor because of that, and not happy with the drain because of that, and besides that, there would just be spots on the ground. I don't know what that spot is, but whatever it is, it's surely life threatening, right? And uh I remember, sort of remember, that there was this white stuff on the ground one day in there, and I didn't know what caused it. I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't going to closely investigate, though. I mean, certainly my full attention was on that spot that day, making sure that I didn't even get close to stepping on that spot. But then, I would leave the bathroom and I would think, did I step on that spot? I mean, I paid very close attention to the spot, so naturally, I probably stepped on the spot because I was paying attention to the spot, so my foot would have been drawn towards the spot, and um, I'm gonna get hepatitis, or more so that day. I was thinking, white spot. What would cause a white spot? What happens in high school bathrooms that would cause a white spot? And to me, the answer was drugs. People go to the bathroom and they do drugs. You hear that all the time. High school bathrooms are where people do drugs, and I again, I'm a very active, faithful member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and drugs. Well, we have what is called the word of wisdom, where God warns us about certain substances out there in the world, and to not partake of that stuff, and drugs is part of that. And so, and no cigarettes, no tobacco, no alcohol, um, it, no tea, no coffee, but definitely worried about drugs. And I'm thinking, you know I don't know anything really about drugs because all I know is don't do that. That's bad. That's, beyond it just being a commandment, you grow up and you see things and you just become aware through other people's conversations that, you know, dr- people are using drugs, and generally it just always seems like there's some kind of bad outcome associated with them. That and alcohol, people love them because you're less inhibited. And to me, less inhibited, that's not a good thing. That's a sign that, your God-given agency uh, is is blurred. You have less of what God gave you to warn you, protect you, to just, I mean, people black out and things, and they're like, "What did I do?" And so, I didn't want to have that happen. And I remember, again, thank you sincerely, Mom, that growing up, Mom would talk about, okay, drugs are bad, and God says so. But beyond that, my family's medical history, um, we have a lot of, uh, hmm, how do I say it? A lot of mental illness, a lot of um, just craziness. And again, I'm using that in terms of how I was processing the world at that time. And, mental illness just seemed like, wow, that's really bad. And I don't want that. And so her point was, our family, you're all already tends to have these problems where the brain is messed up, and drugs would just kind of make that worse. Um, and as a side note, um, I've always I look at the bottles that medication comes in, pills, and it seems like just about all of them say something about do not use alcohol when you're taking this medication. Um, and so, it's there's always that automatic relief of, whew, glad I don't have to deal with that. I wonder, you know, how do how do people that without the word of wisdom, um, how do they deal with uh, don't do alcohol and taking pills, and because taking pills is the rest of your life. At least it has been for me, and I'm 38, so despite feeling very old, that's still a young age. Anyway, massive detour. Um, so I was afraid that the white spot was drugs. And, the magical OCD thinking, how things transmit, would be, you know, my shoe touches the drug thing, and then I'm so it's on my gets on my shoe, and then you know I don't know. At some point, it just like travels from your shoe to inside of you. Um, and so, a little osmosis kind of things that don't really make sense, but, OCD doesn't make sense. And Uh, but it could be something as rational as my foot touched that, and then later something I was out of my mind crazy. I don't know what I was thinking, but somehow, for some reason, I touched my shoe, and I probably touched it exactly where the drug thing was. And then, somehow crazy, out of my mind, without thinking, I my my the drugs that are now on my hands from touching my shoe are, I eat something and now they're inside of me. And so I just knew or was very concerned that I had done drugs. And sorry, the screen appears to be uh, frozen there for a minute. Uh, and like I said before, I'm my exposure in doing all of these videos is I can't edit things. So, and I'm not supposed to over explain that kind of thing, pointing it out explicitly, but uh, you know, I did it. Just, um, so I thought for sure that I had breaking God's commandments and I was hooked on drugs just because there was a spot in the high school bathroom, and you know there's other fluids that the body emits that might be in the high school bathroom from, I don't know, people uh, doing unchaste sex kind of thing. And so and you, again, I don't have a lot of and so I was just convinced that either I'm hooked on drugs now or I have some horrible STD. And, or both, probably both, because that would be the worst of the three options there, is both. So, anyway, that's what would happen. And then I would get home and I would start telling my mom all of this. And, I would be just sweaty and shaking and yelling and just white faced. And so my mom's thinking, something is up. I mean, Gregory's always been very stressed, very anxious when it comes to schoolwork, but he hasn't really exhibited these behaviors, these thoughts before, and he is not looking good when he's communicating this stuff. He's really, really sincerely freaked out, and this is getting out of control, and I have to intervene. It's what my mom was thinking, and so she called whatever doctor person and set up um, the the appointment so that I could um, get diagnosed psychologically. And I was not happy at this news when mom told me that she had done that. It wasn't, thanks, mom, that's a really good thing. No, it was, what are you thinking? How could you do that? Don't you love me? Why would you do that? But she did it. And, you know, I will always be grateful that she did that. And, she's just been there for me all my life in the darkest moments and, helping, taking care of me. And so, anyway, I go to this appointment and immediately I'm pretty unhappy because there's this enormous form uh, that you have to fill out, asking you all of the questions so that they can diagnose you and know, is this person schizophrenic? Is he depressed? Does he have OCD? What's going on here? And, you know, I hate forms. At least I hate filling in forms when I have to come up with the data for the forms. I love forms that I have the data for, so I'm just entering the data, taking it from paper and putting it into the computer. That is awesome. Um, and there's totally a whole OCDville located there too. But it just, because OCD, you have a very hard time choosing things because you're doubting your responses. That's why it's called the doubting disease. Um, and so I don't know. But so we're there. It's probably 2 hours. I don't know. Just filling out this form, and it's asking how many hours of the day is this person feeling anxious or depressed or uh, the other things, and just how long does it take them to do various things, and how long does the craziness uh, stay, um, and how much of their life does that craziness take up. So then we finish with the form, and we go in and see Dr. Flammer. I think it's Donald, but it's been a few years since I've been 16, but it was Dr. Flammer, and he looked at all the information, and I mean the form was the DSM-4. I think that's the right uh, abbreviation name for the form. Um, it's anyway. So we see Dr. Flammer, and he's looking at the form, and then he's asking more questions, and then he's I don't really remember exactly how the appointment went, but then at some point he diagnosed me. He said, "You have OCD. You have obsessive compulsive disorder." And my mom and I are just like, "Okay, uh, what's that?" Neither of us had ever heard of it before, um, though it certainly seemed to be using the right words in the acronym. um, but what is that? What does that mean? What does that mean for my life? And what is that? And so, he explained somewhat, and I don't know, it kind of felt like, congratulations, you're diagnosed, you have OCD. Uh, Now let's find doctors for you. You need a psychologist and a psychiatrist. A psychologist is also referred to as a therapist. A psychiatrist is a therapist kind of person, but they prescribe medicine, which is not happy that I had to take medication, scared to death of medication. And I had never been able to successfully swallow a pill before in my life. And now they're saying, okay, you have to take this pill every day. And, my mom, because she knows me, and me, because I somewhat know me, say, okay, is there a chewable form of that? No, there's not a chewable form of Prozac. And he so we're sent home, and we have this handout that's, again, it's, you have OCD, and this is what that means, and here's some ways to help. Um, and again, we had never heard of this condition before. And, it was so new that, when we got home and told my dad what they said, he said, huh, uh, right. Uh, some, I, the implication was obsessive compulsive disorder. Yep, that describes him to a T. Uh, Almost like they made that term up. Uh, and yeah, this is just made up. And at that point, I'm certainly hoping that it's made up. Um, though, part of me is grateful and thinking, okay, there's a name for this, because there's just there's a lot of really bad things in life, but on the top of that list is having any kind of medical condition that really affects every day of your life in a profound way, and they can't figure out what it is. There's not a name for it, there's not a label for it. Um, Fortunately, that wasn't the case with OCD. We just hadn't heard it before, so it seemed like this label that they could have just made up, and they're just guessing. And quite frankly, we're little doubtful. Me, dad, probably mom a little, but um, just we had I had grown up thinking of psychologists as quacks, and so it wasn't great to have to be quacked. um, so, um, but we had handout and we had a video, and it. Here are four other teenagers who also have OCD, and this is how it affects their lives. And I remember that one of them, um, he was into the checking. He had to do the checking, and he wouldn't sleep at night because he was constantly checking to make sure that all of the doors and windows were locked. And again, most people would think, okay, I locked the door. Uh, hmm, did I lock the door? I don't know. Maybe I'll go check, but then you lock the door, and then you're like, I know for certain that I have locked this door because I went back and checked. And I mean, so checking is a natural thing, but with OCD, it doesn't click. You check it, and then you walk away, and you're like, did I check the door? And really, the the really dastardly part of that is that you can be checking the door, you can have your hand on the lock, and so tactic uh, physically, um, you are feeling that that door is locked, and yet at the same time, you are thinking, is this door locked? Am I perceiving this correctly, that the door is locked? Because maybe I'm just, I don't know, I'm making, maybe it's unlocked. And so this kid spent most of the night um, checking the locks. And that's the one that I really remember. Though I'm sure that you know, one of the other, I think it was four uh, kids, teens, uh, was dealing more with um, hand washing constantly. And whether from that or a different example that I was given shortly after diagnosis, I became aware that um, sometimes there was this girl and she had the hand washing thing, but she was hand washing because she OCD was saying if you don't wash your hands, your parents are going to die today. Or your sister or your brother, just someone that you love. And it'll be your fault because you didn't wash your hands. And again, crazy, right? But no, that's how OCD is. And so, and quickly after that, I was given the book Brain Lock and uh, read about more people with OCD. And, but, I, aside from the video, I felt like I was alone in the world with this condition and that I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to address it. And boy, it sure would have been nice if there was some book that some person with OCD wrote about what it's like to have OCD, um, or some vlog, some podcast, though those things weren't things at the time, but just some first-hand account, and uh, there wasn't uh, not one that didn't wasn't written by partially by the doctor. Um, I don't know. Maybe there was, but I wasn't aware of it at that time. And um, that's just to say, part of why I'm doing this podcast and why I wrote the book was because I wish I had this kind of a resource when I had been diagnosed, because it was still um, new and just not understood. Um, and shortly after, in that time frame, As Good as It Gets came out with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt and Greg Kinnear and Cuba Gooding Jr. And other people, um, where Jack Nicholson has OCD, and so it goes into that. And that was great to have a movie about that I could watch. But um, so diagnosis, it's not fun, but today there are a lot more resources out there, and a lot more doctors are aware that OCD is a thing, because back then it was still kind of new, even to doctors, and it certainly uh, at that time there just wasn't a lot of real knowledge out there about OCD, and fortunately there is now. And um, if you're not aware of them yet, there is the International OCD Foundation, and their website address is iocdf.org. And they have a lot of great stuff there, a lot of great resources. And um, again, cycling back to the beginning of this episode, um, I am just very eternally grateful for my mother. She um, has always been there, even in the darkest times when it's manifested the ugliest. Um, and, she listened, and, uh, she has always sought out those resources for me. Um, Beginning when with my diagnosis, and even, I mean, continuing to this day. And um, I recently uh, had another breakdown, major depressive episode. That's what my therapist calls it. And uh, my mom uh, sought out the resources that I needed, um, and so that I could get through that second breakdown. Um, and, if the topic of us moving has come up uh, recently, I know that one of the first things she does when she is looking at moving is, do they have an OCD specialist in this place? Because we're not moving anywhere where they don't have that. Because my son needs that, and um, she has always been my greatest advocate and support. Um, and my dad, he's great too. Things were a little more rough there, but I'm very eternally grateful for my dad and all of the things he's done and provided and so forth. But this is the Mother's Day edition of this podcast. It's not the Father's Day. So sorry, Dad, not your episode. So thank you, Mom, and thank you for all of the other mothers and grandmothers that have been present in my life. A lot of them teachers that I was very close to, and uh, still have relationships with, and um, others who, they Sister Dittman, thank you. Um, she helped me through the darkness too. Uh, she's a recent mother uh, in my life. Not really my mother. Met through church. Um, anyways, um, I should end this episode because, again, I think I'm repeating myself. But thank you, Mom, and thank you. Gregory, out.